Welcome to Module 2 of the MERL training. In this module, we'll look at indicator and MERL frameworks development. Under indicator development, we'll look at the smart indicators, types of indicators, and how to develop indicators. The second part is going to look at the MERL frameworks. And here we'll look at the result framework, theory of change, logical framework, and the M&E Plan, which is not a framework, but an important a must-have for every project. So now, by the end of this module, participants will be able to describe the key components of M&E frameworks, including the result framework, the theory of change, the logical framework, and also a bonus, the M&E plan. The other thing is you'll be able to identify and define smart indicators and differentiate types of indicators. The other thing also, you're going to demonstrate the process of developing effective indicators tailored to the specific program goals. So the first part is indicator development. In this module, we'll explore how to create smart indicators, types of indicators using M&E, and also the role of baseline data and needs assessment in target setting. Additionally, we'll dive into the M&E. What is an indicator? In monitoring and evaluation, indicators are measures that help to track, assess progress, and performance of the program or intervention. They are specific, measurable, observable. They are specific, measurable, and observable characteristics or features that provide information about the outputs, activity, outcomes, as well as the impact of the program. So why do we need indicators? Number one, to determine progress towards achieving planned results. Number two, to inform decision making for effective annual work plans of the program. To improve project performance and development impact. When you have indicators, you'll be able to know whether this program is making impact or not. To support sound resource allocation and decision. If you have a project and it has already hit the target, the indicator is showing it has already hit the target, you're going to slow down your activity for that project or for that indicator, which is what we mean by, support sound resource allocation. You're not going to spend more money on that because you've already hit your target. Indicators are telling you that you've hit your target, so there's no need for you to continue doing that kind of work. The fifth one is to mitigate risks to the achievement of results. Now, indicators can tell us things whether we've met our objectives, whether we're making progress, whether the targets are being met, or whether there's change that is actually happening in that community. So the main types of indicators, we have the quantitative indicator, and the qualitative indicators. So quantitative indicators statistically measure the amount and value of inputs or resources available, right? So these are quantifiable, they are numeric in nature. While qualitative indicators are measures that describe or assess the quality of a certain aspect of characteristics, often based on subjective assessment. They want to answer the why, the how, and what kind. These indicators focus more on the personal judgment, opinions, and perceptions, as well as attitudes, of that community. We also have what we call program indicators in MERL. So there are several types of indicators that can be used in monitoring, including input indicators. So with input indicators, what you're looking at is mainly, you're looking at the funding. Do we have enough resources? Do we have enough staff? Do we have materials? That's input indicators. Then with output indicators, you're going to look at the service delivered. You're going to look at the products produced. You're going to look at the people reached. How many people have we reached in that particular incident? What service have we provided? Outcome indicators, you're looking at the change, the improvements. What has changed? Have we seen any change in income, any health improvements, depending on the nature of the project? Then we also have process indicators. These just assess how we're implementing our projects. They look at the service. The service quality. Is the project implementation or the service that we're delivering, is it of quality? And then also the timeliness. They're looking at, are we implementing our projects within the planned time? They also look at the stakeholder engagement. Are we seeing more people appreciating our work? The other thing is impact. You're looking at the overall impact, the effects in the community. Have we seen any change? The environment, have we seen any change? So basically these are some of the examples of indicators that are used in MERL. Now, we have what we call smart indicators, right? So these are indicators that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound that are used in monitoring and evaluation. So smart indicators help us to ensure that indicators chosen are well defined and can effectively measure and track progress towards specific goals and objectives. All right. So now, just a summary of what smart indicator is all about. So a criteria, we have what we call specific. When they say an indicator is specific, what do they mean? It means that an indicator is clearly defined and focused on the specific aspect of the program, avoiding being broad or vague. So an example of that indicator could be the number of women receiving perinatal care in the last trimester, compared to just saying women's health outcome, which is too broad. Then the other thing is measurable. Indicators must be quantifiable to allow progress to be tracked with units like numbers, percentage, and rates. An example of such an indicator could be the percentage increase in number of girls attending primary school. Achievable. Indicators should be realistic and feasible to measure, as well as considering the available resource and data. So now here you want to know like the increased number of farmers using organic farming practices. That's something that you want to know. The other thing is relevant. When you say an indicator should be relevant, what do we mean? It must be directly related to the program goals and intended outcomes. You cannot come up with an indicator that is, you're doing let's give an example, a project in farming, and then you start talking about GD, you start talking about, what kind of indicator can I put in? You start talking about HIV, you're talking about farmers, improving their crop yield. Then you start talking about number of HIV, number of condom distributed. That's irrelevant. So an indicator should be very, very directly related to the program goals and intended outcomes. For example, reduction in number of malaria cases if you're dealing with a malaria project. That's a good indicator. Time bound. Indicator must have a clear time frame for measurement to track progress over time. Indicators should have a time frame. Okay, you can't just say a percentage of household access to clean water and then you end there. What do you mean? When and how? You get what I'm saying? So you need to include the time bound. Steps to developing effective indicators. Step number 1, you need to define the objective and outcome. What do we mean here? You need to ask yourself this question: what are you trying to measure? Clearly identify the specific objective, outcome, and impact to be measured aligned with the program goals. An example, we're going to talk about HIV project. Now, example of one objective is increase HIV testing in that community. The second thing that you need to do is determine the type of indicator. Now that you know what you're trying to measure, you need to determine the type of indicator. So what aspect of the objective do you want to measure or track? So you need to decide whether you use quantitative data or qualitative data. Okay, so an example of a quantitative indicator, still with the same HIV program, could be the percentage of individuals tested for HIV. And then a qualitative indicator would be the level of community satisfaction with HIV testing services, assuming you're doing an HIV testing program. Those are some of the indicators that you can come up with. The other thing now, you need to specify indicator characteristics, which is make your indicators SMART: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Ensure that the indicator is clearly defined, feasible, specifying what will be measured, how, and what period. An example of that indicator could be the number of individuals aged 15 to 19 receiving HIV testing services per quarter. You have time-bound, you have who you're looking at, you have when are you looking at, and what you're looking at. Everything in one indicator. That's how every indicator should be developed for your project. Step 4 is you need to identify data sources and collection methods. Okay, where will my data come from? Ask yourself that. So you need to decide where data will come from and how it will be collected, ensuring it's reliable and it's practical. Example of a data source, if for example you're dealing with an HIV program, you're going to look at the clinical records, the patient survey, National Health Information System. So those are some of your data sources. So you need to, whatever indicator you develop, how am I going to get that data? What are some of my sources, or what method am I going to use? Where is my data going to come from? Remember that. The other thing also is establish baseline and set target. An indicator should have a target and it should have a baseline. Try by all means to have, it's non-negotiable. You must have a target and a baseline for that indicator. So you need to know what is the starting point and what is the goal. An example, still an HIV project. You've done a baseline where you've found that 50% of individuals aged 15 to 49 received HIV testing services in 2023. Then your target for 2023 obviously is to increase that from 50% to 75% by end of 2025. That's how you set your target, or that's how you set your target based on the baseline. Now, I've talked about the baseline and needs assessment in the previous slides. So what are these two important tools in monitoring and evaluation? So a baseline is an initial measurement of data collected at the beginning of the project or intervention. So it serves as a starting point against which future progress and changes can be compared or evaluated to. So baseline, they provide the initial measurement for indicators, establishing a starting point against which progress will be measured, right? So then with the needs assessment, it's a systematic process where you determine and address addressing the needs or gaps between the current condition and the desired condition. So before you even implement your project, you'd want to know what is the current situation, and you compare it with the desired situation. You find that here there's no water, people don't have access to clean water in your baseline, and your desired outcome is to build a wall, a dam for these guys, or you put up a water system for these guys. So baseline will help you to identify the gaps. Okay, that's it. You identify the gaps, you work with those gaps and come up with your intervention based on those gaps. So together, these two, they guide the development of relevant indicators and setting of realistic, meaningful targets by providing context and quantifying necessary improvements and helping prioritizing objectives. Just a few tips that I would like to share with you on how you can develop indicators. So you need to identify the key results, right? Determine the most important outcomes you want to measure at each level of your program. So these results will guide your indicator development. Then understand the program framework. Familiarize yourself with the overall structure and goals of your program. Knowing how different components interact will help you create relevant indicators. Connect your indicators to the result frame. Ensure that your indicators are directly linked to the specific results outlined in your program theory, in your program framework. So this connection will help measure progress effectively, right? So after that, you need to just review and revise. Things change as you're implementing your projects. Certain indicators may not be defined well, but as you implement your project, you still make those adjustments, Yeah. So the second part of this session is the MERL frameworks. We'll start with the theory of change. A theory of change is like a map that shows how a project or program can lead to positive change. It explains a step by step on how actions taken will create a desired outcome. Imagine you want to plant imagine you want to plant trees to improve air quality, right? So you're going to have all those necessary steps that needs to be done. You need to clear your land, you need to put in your seed, you need to put in this, you need to put in that, so that when the tree grows, it's going to improve the air quality. So that's what the theory of change is all about. All right, so basically that's the theory of change. So it explains how different stages, steps, or actions, just like watering, the sunlight for the plants, will bring about the results you want. It helps you understand how each action contributes to the bigger goal, whether it's gardening or development program. Now, what are some of the characteristics of a good theory of change? The first thing is that it has a long-term goal. A theory of change should have a long-term goal, right? So here you define the ultimate objective, strategic areas for intervention, right? Then you're going to have the preconditions. What needs to be done for us to achieve the long-term goal? Identify some of these essential building blocks necessary for achieving the long-term change. The other thing that you need to have in your theory of change is assumption. You align some of the assumptions that must remain valid for the program success. Then the other thing is supporting evidence. A good theory of change should have supporting evidence, to validate the assumption. What are some of the benefits of a theory of change? Number one is clear pathway. It outlines the steps needed to achieve the long-term goal. So it's like a roadmap. It just shows you how you're going to get there. So it creates a clear pathway. Then the second thing is strategic planning. It can be used, as a strategic planning tool, because it's going to map out the logic sequence of events that are expected to lead to the desired outcome. Stakeholder engagement. A good theory of change can be used, to communicate to the stakeholders on what your program is all about. Assumption testing. When you have a theory of change, you can be able to test the assumptions that if we do these things, assuming that these things are in place, then we'll be able to achieve this. Before you even implement your project, you'll be able to test your assumptions. The other thing is monitoring and evaluation. It provides a framework for monitoring and evaluation by clearly defining indicators. So with a theory of change, it can help you to define indicators. Communication. It enhances communication by providing clear and visual representation to stakeholders, right? It can be shared to stakeholders. They will understand what your program is all about. What are some of the steps that you can use to create a theory of change? Step number one, you need to identify the long-term goal. What is it that you want to achieve by the end of this period? Then once you identify that, you need to move backwards now. You conduct a backward mapping to identify the preconditions necessary to achieve that goal. After that, you need to identify interventions that your initiative will perform to create these conditions. Then, you need to develop indicators for each precondition that will be used to assess the performance of the intervention. Then, the last step now, you just write a narrative that can be used to summarize some of these various moving parts in your theory. Some of the best practices of a theory of change is a comprehensive assessment. It provides a wide range analysis where you conduct thorough assessment of needs, assess the opportunities that are available, and then the other thing is stakeholder involvement. When you're developing a theory of change, you need to incorporate the perspectives from various stakeholders. Then the other thing also is participatory approach. Some of the best practices, you need to have a participatory approach in your theory of change. The theory of change should embrace that. Cross-functional involvement, engage staffs from different departments to be part and parcel of the development process. Diverse perspectives, benefits from insights and experience from various participants. The other thing is evidence-based conceptual frameworks. A theory of change will help research that is informed, develop conceptual framework. The other thing also, it's a living document anyway, so meaning you can adapt. It has to be flexible. You have to regularly review it. It's very transparent. Then the second theory is, or the second framework is the result framework, which is a visual tool that maps out how different parts of the program work together to achieve the specific goal. It shows the cause and effect connection between the actions, like activities, interventions, and the results they are meant to produce. So it helps us to understand how each action that we do, how is it contributing to the overall goal? How is it contributing to the objective? So whatever activity that we're planning to do, you need to ask yourself, what is it changing? How is it affecting the overall goal? So the key question to ask at every level when you're developing your or when you're reviewing your result framework is, what result did our intervention in this particular level achieve? Right? So we did this training, but what did it achieve? Did it change the knowledge? Did it improve the knowledge? Did it improve access to that particular product? So those are some of the things that you need to ask yourself as you're trying to review your program. So on my left is an example of a result framework that was developed by Tola Data. So you have your impact at the top, which is improved sexual health in community A, right? And then you have your outcome, which are community members are aware of the family planning services. Now, before you even reach to the impact, how did these guys do it? How did they improve the sexual health in that community? So what did they do? The first activity or the first input is they developed family planning curriculum for nurses in that community. Then they hired a trainer to train those farmers or those necessary. Then what activity did they do? The first activity that they did was they provide training to nurses on family planning. Activity number 2 is that they gave nurses full access to contraceptives, right? And then the output number 1 is, after those nurses were trained, you see how important the result framework is? So Output number one, after the results, after the activity, after those people were trained, nurses had a better understanding of effective family planning practices and they share their knowledge with the community. Okay? Then the other activity that we did also is that we gave access to full contraceptives. Now, when we gave them access, the activity that they did was they started distributing the products, the commodities to the community members. Okay? And then now the outcome now of activity 1 and 2 is that the community members are now aware of these family planning practices and now they use the effective contraceptive because they were trained and because they have received through the distribution activity and then overall improved health of that community. So what are some of the benefits of using a result framework? Outcome oriented result framework focuses on results. It does not focus on the activity, no, we'll do this. It's focusing on what has changed. Performance measurement. When you have clearly defined indicators at each level, a result framework is going to facilitate the measurement of performance and progress towards the outcome of program goals. Strategic planning. This helps as you're doing your planning by linking these activities to the goal and objective. So for example, if you're planning, you're doing a work plan for the coming year, you need to revisit your result frame, right? You need to know, if we say we're going to train people, what is this training going to feed into our overall result framework? So that is what it is talking about. Strategic planning. Resource allocation. Right? If you have looked at your result framework and you've decided, here we've already hit our outcome, we've already hit our target, so there's no need for us to, continue to doing this activity. We can continue, but we need to do it on a slower pace. So meaning there's less resources going to be allocated to that project, to that activity, because of the result. The change has already happened, so there's no need for us to continue doing that. Right? Then accountability and transparency. Obviously, when you have everything clearly outlined, people will know how this activity is actually impacting this, how this is actually leading to that. That is that. Adaptive management says it all. You're going to learn as you review your result framework. You learn and also make adjustments to your result framework. Then we have the third one is a logical framework. A logical framework is a project management tool that provides a structured approach to planning, implementing, and evaluating projects. So it organizes the key project elements into clear, concise, and logical format, typically presented as a matrix. So this framework helps stakeholders define project objective, identify necessary inputs and activities, reach measurable indicators of success, and outline the potential risks and assumptions. So the log frame aims to improve project design by clarifying the causal relationship between different levels of the program goal, specifying how project success will be measured, then highlighting the external factor critical to the project success, like the assumptions. So when we do this, we need to also bear in mind about some of these external forces that may prevent our work or may boost our work. So depending on, whichever you're looking at it. Components of a log frame. It should have a goal, it should have the outcome, it should have the assumptions, the sources of means of verification, the indicators, and also the activities that are going to be done. Let me run you through a process of log frame development. Number one, before you determine the starting point, choose to start from the goal that is top down or existing activities that is bottom up. You need to use a flexible approach that you want that balances both. Or you can use a flexible approach before you even start, right? Do you want to start from the goal and then you start going down to the activities, or you start from the activities, you start going back upwards? Or maybe use a mix of both, right? So what method are you going to use to develop your log? Okay, once you determine that, you describe your project summary. You need to outline the project goal, outcome, outputs in the first column and ensure logic and realistic connections between these levels. You choose the indicators and means of verification, right? So you select these measurable indicators, align them with M&E framework, describe how each indicator will be measured, and you also come up with a definition. How are we going to define that indicator? Identify the risks and assumptions. You list some of those risks that are associated to these different levels, right? So if activities are undertaken and the assumptions are true, then output will be produced, right? This is an example. The review and refine. So if needed, create a problem tree or a theory of change to clarify the relationship between these levels. So this is just an example of a log frame, like a template of log frame. So you're going to have your project summary, which you're going to have your goal, your outputs, your outcomes, activities. Then on the other end there, you're going to have your indicators. What is your indicator? You have got 5-6 outcomes. You need to have like 5-6 indicators. Just between the means of verification and indicator, you can also insert another column where you just define these indicators. And then you can also put a means of verification. How are you going to verify some of these things? What's your data source? Those are some of the things that you can put. Then you also put the risk or the assumptions for those activities, or for those for that outcome, for the outcome to be realized. What is the importance of a logical framework? It's important in monitoring and evaluation because it facilitates the whole continuous monitoring and evaluation by serving as a reference point for tracking progress. Because once you develop your logical framework, it will be a reference point. You have your indicators. You still go back to your say, oh, this is how we'll track this. Is it what we wrote? You still go back to your document and see, oh, this is what we agreed. Okay. No, this is our data source. Oh, okay. You make reference because everything will be in the logical framework. Organized thinking. It helps organize thought, setting performance indicators, allocating responsibility, and communicating effectively throughout the program cycle. Clarity and focus, because you're going to define the project objectives, the activities, and the expected results with precise, you're bringing clarity and focus. You're not going to do, chipante. No, you're going to focus on, you'll be focused and you're going to have clarity because you have clearly defined what you need to do. So that will be your reference point. Alignment, another importance. It ensures that the project activities are aligned with the intended outcome and goals, reducing the risk of the risk of mission. Okay. Communication. I mean, when you have a proper structured logical framework, it's easy for you to communicate this to the stakeholders, right? Because it's clearly defined in simple language, they will be able to understand. Accountability holds program managers and implementers accountable for achieving the planned results and meeting the objectives. What are the differences between the theory of change, result frame, and the logical framework? The first aspect is going to be purpose. With the theory of change focuses on the why and how, a result framework focuses on what results to achieve. Logical framework provides a detailed plan of what to do. Right? You're going to do this. How are you going to do it? You do this A, B, C, D. That's a logical frame or a log frame. Focus. Theory of change is broad. It focuses more on the broader context of the whole project. Result framework focuses on linking the activities to the outcomes. Activity to the results. You said you train teachers. What has changed? That's a result framework. A log frame, on the other hand, focuses on measurable inputs, outputs, and outcome. It looks at everything, right? In terms of structure, a theory of change can be narrative, or you can do a diagram with causal pathways. A result framework, you can use a hierarchy flow from impulse to impact. A log frame, you can do a 4x4 matrix. A theory of change is high level, flexible, and room for adaptation. A result framework, on the other hand, is moderately detailed and tracks logical flow. Log frame is highly detailed with rigid and measurable indicators. You rarely change the log frame, because you can make changes, but it's rigid in most cases. Use is best for understanding complex intervention. That's a theory of change. While a result framework is useful for tracking results and outcomes, a log frame is ideal for detailed project management. Flexibility, more adaptive during project evolution. There's some element of flexibility in updating results. The log frame is less flexible once established. Now, we're done with the frameworks. We have to come up with a very, very, very important tool in monitoring and evaluation, which is the MERL plan, which is the Monitoring, Evaluation, Research and Learning Plan, or the M&E Plan. So this describes how the whole M&E system of the program works. So this includes the indicators, who is responsible for collecting them, what form, what tools will be used, how the data flow from the organization, throughout the organization. Some of the key benefits of an M&E plan. It helps to track progress and performance, inform decision making, improve accountability and transparency, enhance resource efficiency, identify areas for improvement, then support learning and adaptation, demonstrates impact and success. Those are some of the benefits of an M&E plan. Increase the stakeholder engagement. You have a plan in place. You can easily share it with the stakeholders. They will understand how you're going to move from this to that. Clearly defined, clearly documented, it improves stakeholder engagement because they will be part and parcel in the development process of the plan. So they need to have a feel of what the plan is all about. Okay. The main components of a MERL plan. You need to have the objective, your goals, target population. You need to have the project activities. You need to have the indicators. In your M&E plan, you need to have the data. How are you going to analyze your data? How are you going to communicate your data? How are you going to report, your data? How are you going to do your data collection? So these are some of the main components that needs to be in your plan, in your M&E plan for that project. How can one develop an M&E plan? Step number one, define the purpose or scope of that M&E plan. So you clarify the goals of the M&E plan and align them with the organization's mission, focusing on, for example, if if the organization is focusing on climate change and health, then your M&E plan should be aligned to that organization mission. Engage stakeholders. Involve key stakeholders. Could be the community members, healthcare provider, policymakers, in the planning process to gather insights and ensure that their perspective ahead. So for example, one would ask, why should I engage them? So for example, if you want to implement a project in a health setup, you'd want to engage the healthcare provider so that you understand what are some of the data sources, how is data moved from the community to the facility. You just want to get those, basic information so that it helps you to structure your approach on how you're going to, how you're going to support that facility with regards to data collection or data analysis. The other thing is develop a result framework. So you can develop a framework in short. You can either develop a theory of change, a logical frame, a logic model, whichever that you want to. You can develop all, but one is okay, two is okay. But you must develop either it's a theory of change or logical framework that is going to speak to your project, right? That is going to speak to your project related to, is it climate, is it health, depending on that project, right? The other thing is identify indicators. You need to develop specific measurable indicators that are aligned with the outcome in the result framework or that are addressing whichever project that you're focusing on. You need to come up with the data collection and management. How are you going to collect your data? What tools? How are you going to manage your data? The quality, the security, the confidentiality. You need to document all those things in your plan. The other thing is baseline. You need to conduct a baseline assessment to gather initial data on key indicators before implementing your intervention. So you need to do those things, document how you're going to do a baseline in that. And if you've done the baseline, you need to also update your plan. The other thing is you need to plan for evaluation. You need to define your evaluation time frames, the questions, the methodologies that are going to be used. Is it going to be formative? Is it going to be summative? All these things have to be documented in your M&E plan. Learning and adaptation. How are you going to learn from your project? How are you going to adapt from your project? These have to be defined clearly in your M&E plan. Reporting and communication. How are you going to share your findings with the stakeholders? What language, what platform, all these things have to be documented there. Resource allocation, human resource, document that. Who is going to be responsible in what budget, all those things need to be there. Okay. The other thing also that I did not put here, you can put the budget as well. You can also put who's going to, the responsible personnel, who's going to do what, who's going to do this, who's going to collect this data, who's do all those things. You can put them in your M&E plan. Always ensure that it has to be comprehensive but very brief, because you don't need to create a document that is 55, 60 pages. It's going to take away the stakeholders' interest. So be brief, direct to the point so that it does not consume so much time to people that are going to be reviewing that document. So basically that's it on module 2. We looked at indicator development and also MERL framework development as well as M&E plan development. Thank you. We'll move to the next module that is focusing on data collection analysis in MERL.